40 million copies of his last LP, which was called Thriller. But that was 4 years ago. Since then, he's been searching for the inspiration to be able to do it again.
It's not every day you hear about Michael Jackson crying over a song, let alone 5. The king of pop, who seemed larger than life, who moonwalked on stages before millions, and whose every breath was dissected by the public, rarely let the world in on his deeply personal emotional experiences. That's what made the moment he named 5 songs that moved him to tears so utterly human, so unforgettable. It wasn't a press stunt. It wasn't a tearful acceptance speech at some glittering awards show. It was more like a confession, a glimpse behind the curtain of someone we all thought we knew but never really did. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Michael Jackson, known for his otherworldly talent, was also a deep-feeling soul, perhaps more than people ever realized. From the time he was a child star fronting the Jackson 5, to the peak of his solo career with albums like Thriller and Bad, Jackson cultivated an image of precision, perfection, and mystique. But behind the perfectionist was a person who could be undone by a simple melody, a poignant lyric, or a voice that reached into something sacred. When he named the 5 songs that had made him cry, it wasn't random. These were not just pretty ballads or chart-topping pop hits. These were songs that hit him hard, ones that struck a nerve, pierced his armor, and reminded him of the beautiful, terrible power of music. The first song he named was Smile, originally composed by Charlie Chaplin. It's fitting that this song was one of them. Smile, though your heart is aching, smile, even though it's breaking. Those words, timeless, gentle, almost whispered through the veil of sorrow, carried a message that Jackson seemed to have lived by. The song's origins in the 1936 film Modern Times already imbued it with history and melancholy, but it was Nat King Cole's 1954 version that really gave it wings. Jackson didn't just admire the song, he revered it. So much so that he recorded his own version, included posthumously on his History, Past, Present, and Future Book 1 album. When he spoke about the song making him cry, it wasn't just the melody that moved him. It was what it represented, the idea of smiling through pain, of maintaining grace in the face of devastation. For someone who grew up under the harsh glare of stage lights and public scrutiny, Smile wasn't just a song, it was survival. Then there was What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, a song so pure, so uncomplicated in its joy, yet tinged with a kind of wistful hope that can bring even the most stoic listener to tears. Jackson, with all his cynicism about the world and its injustices, found solace in its simple message. I see trees of green, red roses too. These were not just lyrics, they were a vision of the world as it should be. In the voice of Louis Armstrong, there was something deeply human, a reminder that beauty still exists, even amid chaos. For Jackson, who often felt alienated, misunderstood, and hunted by tabloids, What a Wonderful World must have felt like a gentle hand on the shoulder saying, "It's okay, there's still goodness out there." Another song that made him cry was Roberta Flack's The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. Now this one hit differently. Written by Ewan McCall in 1957 and made iconic by Flack's haunting 1969 rendition, the song is pure emotion. It doesn't rush, it doesn't show off. It just exists, like a slow sunrise over a quiet landscape. The first time Jackson heard it, he was reportedly struck speechless. The way Flack delivers each line, tender, reverent, like she's holding the memory of a sacred moment, it's almost too much to bear. For someone like Jackson, who often felt disconnected from real intimacy and constantly under the microscope, this song must have opened a floodgate. It spoke of something eternal and untouched. It reminded him, perhaps painfully, of what it means to truly see someone, to connect so deeply that time itself slows down. Number 4 on his list was Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. Of course it was. That song is a balm, a kind of spiritual medicine wrapped in harmony. Released in 1970, the song became an anthem of comfort, a promise made in sound. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. That wasn't just poetry, it was a vow. Jackson, who famously battled loneliness, particularly in his later years, must have felt both comforted and shattered by it. The song's gradual build, from soft, hymn-like beginnings to a powerful crescendo, mirrored the emotional arc he so often crafted in his own music. It gave him permission to feel, to break down, and to believe that someone somewhere might understand. The 5th and final song was Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. This one wasn't about sadness or romance, it was about truth. Released in 1971, the song was a plea, a cry from the soul of a nation on the brink. Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. It was Marvin at his most raw, and Jackson, ever the socially conscious artist, was deeply affected by it. He admired Gaye not just as a vocalist, but as a truth-teller. What's Going On didn't just make Jackson cry, it made him think, made him feel the weight of the world in a way that art rarely does. It reminded him of his own responsibility as an artist. Jackson would go on to channel that same spirit in songs like Man in the Mirror and Earth Song, but it was What's Going On that planted the seed. What's fascinating about these choices is how personal they are, not just to Jackson, but to the collective human experience. These aren't obscure B-sides or esoteric jazz pieces. They are cultural touchstones, songs that have touched millions. And yet, for Jackson, they weren't just music. They were mirrors, reflections of moments and feelings he couldn't always express himself. For someone who communicated through rhythm, dance, and spectacle, these songs offered a quiet language of the soul. For someone who communicated through rhythm, dance, and spectacle, these songs offered a quiet language of the soul. There's something profoundly grounding about knowing that Michael Jackson cried over these songs. Not because we want our icons to be vulnerable, but because it makes them real. It reminds us that even the most seemingly untouchable people are moved by the same melodies we are. That when Marvin Gaye asks, "Who are they to judge us simply because our hair is long?" he's not just singing to the crowd. He's singing to Michael, too. And of course, Jackson himself created music that moved people to tears, millions of them. From She's Out of My Life to Will You Be There, he was a master of emotional storytelling. But hearing which songs he couldn't get through without tears tells us something deeper. It tells us that even a man who redefined what music could be was still, at heart, a fan, a listener, a boy from Gary, Indiana, who sat quietly in a room somewhere and let a song break him open. It's easy to forget that. Beneath the fame and controversies and spectacle, Michael Jackson was a deeply sensitive person. He was an observer of life, of beauty, of pain. The songs he named, Smile, What a Wonderful World, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, Bridge Over Troubled Water, and What's Going On, each represent a different facet of the emotional spectrum: resilience, awe, intimacy, comfort, and conscience. They weren't random picks. They were a map of his heart. Jackson's relationship with music was not just technical or performative, it was spiritual. He often spoke about how he didn't write songs so much as receive them, like a vessel. In that sense, the songs that made him cry were probably received the same way. They weren't just things he listened to, they were things he felt. They passed through him, reshaped him, stayed with him. It's worth noting that Jackson was known to spend long, solitary hours listening to music in his home. Friends and collaborators have recounted walking into a room to find him sitting perfectly still, headphones on, eyes closed, lost in a world far away from the Neverland Ranch or the studio. He once described music as a complete experience, one that engaged not just the ears, but the soul. So when he cried, it wasn't performance, it wasn't curated, it was catharsis. Imagine him, maybe late at night, the world outside muted and distant, pressing play on Roberta Flack's voice. The gentle strum of the guitar, the breathy, aching delivery. The first time ever I saw your face, I thought the sun rose in your eyes. Imagine the quiet tear rolling down his cheek, unnoticed, unremarkable. A moment that for someone else might be private and ordinary, but for Jackson, whose life was anything but normal, was a rare kind of peace. And then think of What a Wonderful World, how the horns swell with hope, how Armstrong's gravelly voice feels like a hug from the past, or Bridge Over Troubled Water, which builds like a sunrise of compassion. These were not just songs to Jackson, they were companions. Perhaps most moving is the idea that someone like Michael Jackson, who gave so much of his life, his body, his very identity to music, could still be surprised by it, still be broken open by it. That after all the Grammys, platinum records, and sold-out tours, he could hear Louis Armstrong sing "I Hear Babies Cry, I Watch Them Grow," and weep like any other man. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Michael Jackson's emotional side? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.